All right, guys, we are live. Welcome to the Mogul Mami podcast. It's your girl, Elaine Gonzalez Johnson. This is literally the first time I've ever done something like this. In this new season, I've been praying to the Lord. I'm like, Lord, give me something new. What am I supposed to be doing? And if you've been listening to the Mogul Mami podcast, you know that your girl tells you all of her business. I told you guys why I took a sabbatical. I told you guys what's been going on in my life. And in this season, I want to bring in some of the top minds in my life, whether they're business owners, whether they're in ministry, whether we're just talking about real life things. But I will be going live on Facebook and YouTube just because I absolutely love the dynamic of getting my listeners involved. Y'all know I'm a church girl, so I love all the amens. I love all the yes girls. And so today for episode 51, I have an incredible guest. Okay. Literally, as I was preparing for today's episode, I'm like, I don't even know why I've never had this guest on before. But you know what? It's fine because all things work together and we're about to have a good time. Please be sure to use the chat box so that I can see your questions. If you guys have any or any comments, I'm here for it. So today, episode 51 of the Mogul Mami podcast, I have an incredible guest. A lot of people say that we are one of the same. They say that we are cut from the same cloth, and it could be because we are siblings, but I have none other than my brother joining us today. And my brother is taller than me, but he's younger than me. Let me just put that out there. Okay, your girl's still older, but he's grown to be one of my bestest friends in this entire universe, which is crazy because we totally didn't get along. But I think maybe in the past 2 years, our relationship has flourished, our relationship has grown. He is now an entrepreneur, and I'm not going to tell you everything because I want to give him the opportunity to share with you, but he's an entrepreneur. He is an amazing husband. He's an amazing dad. He is in ministry. He is one of the most amazing preachers you'll ever hear. And you guys know that I'll be letting y'all know Stephen Furtick, Michael Todd. Then you got Jose Gonzalez. I'm just saying. If you've never heard a sermon, you got to tune in. But I am so excited about the conversation that we're going to have tonight. So get ready, get excited. I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. Let us see. Hello and welcome, brother.
Hey,
You have to
I'm
match
here.
my energy. You have to match my energy.
Oh yeah. Hey.
So my brother, his name is Jose Gonzalez. He is an entrepreneur. He does so much for the community. But tell us a little bit about your business.
So my business is called Reliant Services, and it's like an umbrella company. So we have a couple different business lines under it. But just to summarize it, my technicians, they provide services for things that a lot of people can't do, right? So, for example, you go to Dunkin' Donuts, you see a TV mounted on the wall, right? My guys did that, right? So we're not like Apple or anything like that, but we're in a different type of lane where we're providing the I guess you can say the skill set to get things installed. So a lot of my guys install a lot of complicated type of stuff, from fiber to cable. We even got plumbing now. We're into that and a lot of other things. But that's like in a nutshell what we do.
But that's not a typical field. Like when, I was in college or when I was in high school, no one really talks about that lane of business. So how did you get started?
So that's a good point. So when I got out of high school, I was thinking about going to college at some point, and I decided to go to trade school first, and then from there I got hired as a satellite installer. That's where I started as a satellite installer, just installing DirecTV, right? But that company that installed satellite, right? They started diversifying and doing other things. And so I mean they're not even around anymore today, but that's where I learned a lot of just the small stuff on, it's interesting how someone could, just decide to just pick up and do something else while doing something, right? And like I think I've learned that a lot of people who are successful, they're not just in one lane. They're doing a couple different things. They're branching out, and they're becoming what we call a one-stop shop, where you go here. It's like before we used to go to, I guess you can say, Radio Shack just to get one specific type of thing. But now, you can go to Walmart or Target and or Amazon, right? And you can find the very same thing, and while buying yourself a pair of shoes at the same time, getting yourself diapers in another lane or whatever, right? So I think the world is looking for that. Like, hey, I just want one person who could do it all, right? So that's pretty much the lane I decided to go in and explore, and that's why I decided to start my brand on. I want to have a set of guys, or people, right? Because it's not just limited to guys; women can do it too.
Women
I just
absolutely can.
listen. I've dealt with some women that are beasts, right? Installers, right? So as long as we can provide that solution to install whatever it is, because technology is always changing, but a lot of stuff still needs to be installed. People are not tech savvy, right? And so I got into this field and I noticed that there is a huge need. There's a huge, just wide open door, right? So I started exploring it, and I felt like there was a lane for me to grow in, and that's why I decided to pursue this lane, was because I was like, man, there's so much work in this type of realm, and a lot of people don't talk about it.
So before you decided to start your own company, you were already in this field.
Kind of, yeah, kind of, yeah, kind of.
Okay. So
Even though I went to trade school for electrical, which is crazy, and I ended up doing like satellite television, and now I'm doing a little bit of a couple different things. Like we're doing plumbing. That's not necessarily right tech, but it's just something else that we dive into as we started growing and expanding. My mentality is, why can't we do that? Like I always ask myself that. So I'll look outside and I'll see someone installing something. I'm like, huh, why can't we do that? We can do that. If he can do it, we can do that. And I'll go up to that guy and I'll go, hey, do you guys subcontract? Or hey, how do you get into this? And just ask the person, and the person will tell you, hey, well, this and this and this and that. And that's how I've been able to, find and land contracts, is just by just asking that one person I saw, like, just installing something, right?
so you've been in this field, then you branch off to start your own business. Did you feel ready? Did you feel ready to be an entrepreneur?
No, I did not feel ready. So I started off as a general. I started off as a technician installing. I loved it. I did really well at it. And well, let me go back a little bit. I almost quit my first year. So when I first started tech, in this tech realm, tech world, it's hard. This ain't for the weak, right? Like working in the heat, working in the snow, all kinds of weather. Like it's tough. But I've learned. I was like, you know what? Let me just give it a chance instead of just quitting. Like when I got trained for this, I was the only guy without experience in a class of 12. And I'm the only person that made it out of that class. Everyone else was quitting. They're like, oh, I'm not making enough money. In the beginning, it's true. When I started in this field, I wasn't making much money. But someone gave me advice and said, you know what, just stick it out for a year and see what happens.
Mhm.
So I said, all right, you know what, I'm gonna push through. I'm gonna be consistent and just push through for a year, and I ended up getting promoted because I did so well. So I just got into the rhythm of things, got my pattern, and learned how to do this job faster. Started making a lot of money. I mean, granted, at the time I was like probably 19, right, and just here I am, just trade school, right, and I'm making 3 grand every 2 weeks, right. So I mean, it was for my first job. It was doing pretty well. And
Pause.
so
Let's keep our time here. So did you guys hear that? You were making how much?
three, 3K
$3,000 every 2 weeks?
every 2 weeks. Yeah.
Every 2 weeks, and no college degree, right?
No.
Okay. So I just want to encourage, inspire you. If you're watching this episode, if you're listening to this episode, one of my favorite quotes is, there are 1 million ways to make $100. I think the reason why I do this podcast, the reason why I have all these different speakers give you what they're doing and how they're doing it, it's because you can't be what you can't see. So here we have, you were how old?
19.
19 years old, 19 years old, making $3,000 every 2 weeks. Go ahead. Because I'm about my
I
coin.
mean,
So you blew
listen,
me today.
I got people working for me now that just fresh out of high school making 1,800 a week, right? So I mean, it's definitely doable. But basically, started doing well, and this is all in the 1 year I started, which I almost quit, but I ended up just pushing through. Got in a rhythm, learned it, got promoted, became a training manager, and I can tell you when I first got into management, I was probably trash, because I didn't have any type of experience in that field. But there was this one guy who was really, really patient with me, right? I came in with a boss mentality of, I'm greater than you type of thing, really being mean to people. And I've learned something called a relationship IQ. And we'll talk about that later. But and it just it helped me now. But I've learned, when I started in that realm, um, as a training manager, right? From there, we did really well. I was assisting with performance and stuff. And then I got in an offer to hop into a general manager role for a subcontracting company, right? And a lot of people, including myself, was and are afraid of the subcontracting roles. Everyone's like, "Oh, you got to find a job W-2 benefits and all this and that." That's great, and I believe there's a lane for that. But I do believe that there is subcontracting opportunities that if you know how to capitalize on that, you can absolutely make more money while still having more than enough money to afford your benefits and stuff like that. But I got into that role and I started thriving, just doing really, really well, building chemistry. From there, I got another job offer to run someone's company. So I went from running a site to then running a company. Um, did that right for a couple years, and then the job that I started with, right, as a technician, they hired me to run their area. Came in, did that, broke records. Started doing a lot of crazy stuff outside the box, and that was like why I started, like, I guess standing out from everybody else was because I wasn't trying to be like anybody else. I was trying to stand out and really build chemistry with the people who work for me, and really inspire them to be great. And we did super great, right? But still, I felt like, man, this is great. I'm in a position to influence and empower, but I still feel like I want to do more, right? And so I got a VP role, for a subcontracting company that they hired me. Started doing that, and again, like, just killing it in this company, just doing really, really well, taking their company from the bottom,
So
and
pause,
that's.
pause. You
Mhm.
be you be trying to like rush through all these important
My bad. It
moments.
happens.
So you got a VP role for your company at what age?
When I was a VP, I was probably 22.
22, vice president of his company, because what's the difference? What was your work ethic? What do you think you brought to the table that this company said, "You know what? 22-year-old man, you should be vice president of this company."
Honestly, it's simple. It's hiring, training, and performance. A lot of people don't know how to do those three. They don't know how to recruit, they don't know how to train, and they don't know how to develop people to get them to perform. And that's the secret sauce that I've been able to replicate in any company I've been at. I've been able to take that sauce and just keep moving. It doesn't matter what type of bread, wheat bread, white bread, whatever the company was, I had the same sauce. And all of a sudden they see results, they see performance, like, and that the company direct set that I was in, we won site of the month there, we won a safety awards that office has never seen, right? And these other companies that I ran, we've broken records, and we hit groundbreaking performance that no one has ever been able to get that company to operate at that caliber in such a short period of time. And
But
so.
okay, but you're saying the secret sauce to running a business well is training. What was the other two?
So there's a couple of things. Well, this is what a lot of people couldn't do that I was able to do. I think this is part of it, right? So the hiring,
Hiring,
training,
training,
and developing.
developing. Okay, so this is good. Guys, if y'all not taking notes, go ahead and get a pen. This is like some free gems that people be paying for. But When you say that you were able to look at these companies, no matter what company it was, and bring in your sauce, is what you're calling it, right? Do you think that's like your natural God-given gift, or do you think it's something that you've worked at?
It's something. It's. I don't think it's a gift. I think it's a skill that can be learned. Because when I started, I was the complete opposite. Like this is something that I actually learned throughout my errors. I learned from correction. So I mean, like people who one person told me this, and I love it. It says it's not being great or being a leader. It's not about knowing everything. It's about knowing where to find the answers. And so I was always counting myself as disqualified. Like, man, I can't manage. I can't do this. I can't do that. But I started leaning on people who were smarter than me and learning from those people. And that's how I was able to incorporate a lot of different things and also valuing their feedback. A lot of people are just looking for yes man type of people. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But they don't value people who tell you the truth and go, hey, you were kind of mean what you said to this person, or hey, you're kind of doing this, but it doesn't work, right? Being sensitive to reassessing and going, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Maybe I could do something better here, right?
So I think so. Two things. I'm gonna tell you to your face. I do not like constructive criticism. Like
Mm.
I I don't like it. My husband and I, we get into these consistent conversations because my husband loves feedback. Like he wants to know everything, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And to me, I think because of the field that I'm in, a lot of the work that I do, I feel like it's passion and it's purpose. So I feel like who are you to tell me about my purpose? You know what I'm saying? But you're right. I feel you. Like I think that if you were to be like, well, Elaine, you could do this this time or next time or work on this. But I think I'm so directly connected to what it is that I'm doing that it's hard not to take offense to it. So maybe it's delivery. Like when I was working for the school district, I had someone tell me like, I was getting an award from the mayor. Big deal, right? Like the mayor's office, I was getting an award. And so somebody told me, like, it's so nice that you have that hobby of yours. And I just feel like that was shady. Like, I don't know why people say the things that they do, but oftentimes, whenever I did receive feedback or comments, it was not necessarily wrapped in love. So
Mm.
I hear what you're saying about like how much feedback and training is important, but I also think that there's a gift to it. Like you have to be good at giving people feedback.
Yeah, yeah. Yes and no. I'm not sure if I agree because here's the
You
thing.
can't be like, yo, you
No, well, here I agree with you, but listening is also a skill, right? God gave you 2 ears to listen twice as much as you speak, right? So I think that great leaders need to have the ability and skill. I say it's a skill too, to listen to feedback and go. Now, listen, not all feedback is constructive, right? Some like you got to be able to get that feedback, eat the watermelon, and spit out the seed and go, all right, this feedback, this criticism is not so constructive. It's kind of insulting. Let me just spit that out, right? But there is some feedback that I take and I go, all right, this is constructive. This can make me better because what it does is it shows you if somebody works for you, for example, and they're unhappy. Now, there's two things, right? There's a way that they're delivering that message, right? I always say when you're listening to someone, and this is like whether it's marriage, whether it's relationship, I mean relationship IQ, this is part of it, right? Um, you gotta listen to the intent and disregard the content, right? We focus on the content. Oh no, you did not just come at me and talk to me like I'm some random Joe, like I'm the boss. You should have came at me and said, sir, right? We focus on the little things. We're focusing on the content, right? And this is customer service 101. Like customers are always angry and you go to like if you're the manager of Applebee's or something like that, and the customers all angry coming at you, it makes you feel uncomfortable, right? Because you're focusing on the content, right? But if you listen and try to fish for the intent of why they're unhappy, I think you could get something valuable there, right? Whether it's, you know what, my employee's unhappy because of X, Y, and Z, and I have an opportunity to improve my overall morale if I can fix this one thing, right? Not everything you can fix, but just because you listen to them, they'll appreciate that as well. So I think it's constructive both ways because by listening to them, you're validating how they feel. They're allowed to feel the way they do. So I mean, just employee one on one, like people who work for you, they want to feel like they're heard. They don't want to just be, discarded. And I think number two is you might get something that might lead you somewhere else. And a lot of ideas that I've gotten have been from people that work with me or for me. And I've listened. I'm like, you know what? That's a good idea. Why shouldn't we do that? Right. So I always like, I feel like it's not about being the smarter person in the room, right? But it's about surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you
So
that'll
good.
help you get to the next level, right?
That's so good. I say that all the time. I feel like if I can't grow with you, um, I don't want to say stagnant. Like Stephen Covey says, you are a product of the top 5 people that you hang around. And at first I'm like, that's a lie. But now I'm like, he was all the way true in that. Because I think like even if we take fitness, for example, 90% of the people in my life are in fitness in some way, shape, or form because that's such a huge part of my life, right? Like one of my businesses, Latinas in Motion, it's a fitness, nutrition, wellness nonprofit organization. So by default, you're gonna run with me. Man, child, like you're gonna run with me if you like it or not, right? So I feel you on that. Pivoting the conversation a little bit. So we talked a lot about your business. You gave us some amazing tips and tools about, running a top organization. Let's talk a little bit about your faith. So tell me when you felt like you established an amazing relationship with God.
um, when I established a good relationship with God,
Like I think so, like guys, if you're new to this dynamic of my brother and I, we were like born and raised in the church. Okay. Like we were
facts.
there for Wednesday night service, Friday night, Saturday morning. We would be there when our parents would practice with their choir. Like we were in the church. But I think like you can be in an environment, but it doesn't mean that you're developing your own relationship with God. Right. So it's like I think our parents did a great job of making sure that we were surrounded by it. But I think I don't know about you, but for me it took a lot of work to develop my own relationship with God because I wanted to, not because I was being told to.
Facts.
So
Yeah, I
when
mean,
did that happen for you?
it became real. I mean, when we stopped doing church, right? And I left the church for a while just because, I was young, just out there and
You was for the
um
streets. You was
was
for the
that that's my past life, right? But I mean, I feel like growing up, I was going to church, wasn't really and it's not that I was a part of the church, right? But I guess to me it was something we did. It wasn't relationship driven. It was just a service. And I think that's where a lot of people struggle today, right? They can't determine what a relationship with God looks like because they're just going to a church service and not having relationships, right? Relationship with God, right? So I think when I started attending Bible study and I started asking a lot of questions and had a mentor and we had some Bible studies and he was literally just telling me all a bunch of stuff. I mean, probably gave me everything he had just because at that point I was like there was a point in my life that I got really hungry to learn like what's true, like what is this life about? Like, am I just gonna like live like work hard and die? Like to me, like I had some questions, and so I felt like once I started getting answers to those things, right, it was in a Bible study, and I started learning the real stuff, not just all right, now we're gonna sing chapter, hymn number 25.
right.
Like it became real. And then I started having my own relationship with God and just praying and I felt like that's when God started coming alive. Like that's when well he was always alive, but that's when I started experiencing him on a whole different level because I started having a relationship and I was taught what that looked like and it wasn't what I always thought it was, right? It wasn't like you didn't have to wear a suit and tie to approach God. You can come as you were in a t-shirt and a white beater or whatever. And for me, that's when I started having a relationship with God. It was around, believe it or not, it was actually around the same time that I got involved in all this business stuff. It was at the age of 19. I never forget, right? That was the year I got baptized and everything. Got baptized that year, like started working, like my whole life changed from being, broke, right? Until all of a sudden, I don't know, just given this purpose, and now I started having this hunger to pursue something and do something with my life, right? Um, but that's where it started, right? Now your other question, your other part of the question was, how does that what?
So, one thing, if you guys are just jumping on this conversation, for me, entrepreneurship and faith is like directly connected in my life. So that's
Yes.
why I'm always pivoting the conversation to talk about these things, because for me, being being an entrepreneur, running a business has made my prayer life, y'all. Listen,
Facts.
Lord, if you could make a way out of no way, right? Like for me, and even before, I became an entrepreneur, I was developing a relationship with God. But like, I think a lot of my listeners, and I'll get so many people that will send me DMs or inboxing, like, how do I start a relationship with God? Right. Or I feel like I can't, or, I don't know if I'm worthy. And so I love talking to people like you who are just open to share the realness of your own personal experience, right? Starting a relationship with God. But also you're being very humble. But my brother be knowing his Bible. Like sometimes when I know my Bible, I'll be like, bro, what do you know about this? How can we relate this? But I think also you've had a lot of life experiences, right? And with your life experiences, I love how you're just open about how much you love God and how much he's changed your life, right? So if someone is listening to your story today, right? And they're like, I have no idea how to get started. Like, how do I even start a relationship with God? What is the tip you would give them?
um, I think we're our worst critics. I think we tend to set the bar so high for ourselves, and I think God, was obviously he did what he did to so we can have access to him. So I think it's easier than you think. That's number one, right? You don't have to be perfect, right? God is the one who does the changing. We just have to show up, right? So I feel like God has been extremely instrumental in me being an entrepreneur. I think that's why I was trying to answer your question earlier too, right? Because yes, it requires faith to show up and just be like, all right, you know what? God, I'm not sure, right? And in fact, I pray a lot of my business lines and business struggles. I pray about it, and God just shows up. And there's a Bible verse that says, "Don't worry about anything, but pray about everything." Right? There's also another Bible verse that says, "If worry doesn't accomplish a single moment in your life, then why will you worry over the bigger things? If worrying doesn't accomplish a single small thing, then why would you worry over the bigger things, right?" And so you connect those two together, and it's like, yo, I should be praying about and talking to God about everything. We only talk to God when things are down, but I think we should be talking to God all the time. When things are good, when things are bad, when things are all right, whatever. But I talk to God about everything, even my business, especially my business, right? Because my mindset is, if I can make God my business partner, then my business is never going to fail. It's going to thrive, right?
Come on, use that
And
word.
so I feel like prayer is an easy thing. I mean, I talk to God, and in Jesus' name, is there it is, right? That's is nothing hard, right? So I feel like if you should start with learning how to pray, and it's not hard. I mean, prayer 101, dear God, you talk in Jesus' name, amen. Boom, there you go. That's the secret
Boom,
sauce, right? So I feel
boom.
like we overcomplicate stuff, but I think that here's the way it is. When you speak with someone that you just met, right? A girl, baby girl, put it on me, right? Whatever you meet that girl, right? You're not gonna just automatically. maybe some of you do, right? But for me, I feel like there's a lot of discovering. Like, oh man, I want to get to know her. I wonder what she likes. I wonder what, and it's just that. And I feel like when we come to God, we're coming expecting or thinking that we have to have it all figured out. There's no discovering. And I think in the beginning, it's the most like, but it's the best time to start. When you're starting, you're discovering, like, oh man, God, what is this? What is that? And I feel like we're afraid to discover who God is. We're afraid for God to discover who we are, right? But I feel like one thing that I like and I think about a lot is God knows every single deepest, darkest thought that we have. Yet He still pursues a relationship with us. And one verse that I love is, it says, "How precious are your thoughts for me? If I were to count them, they're like counting the grains of sand." I think about that. I'm like, yo, that's crazy. When I'm at the beach and I'm just like, wow, like that's how much you think about me with the grains of sand while I'm making a sand castle, making a sand castle with my son and daughter. Like, all right, whoa, like I'm amazed just at that because I'm thinking about that in the grains that you can't get out. My son be upset because he got all the sand, can't get out, the deal. But I feel like thinking about that, it's like, yo, God is interested in me and everything, right? He's interested in pursuing something with me. He's interested in doing something big with me, something awesome. And if I make him my business partner, then nothing could go wrong. In fact, I do want to share this too. When I first started getting into this business, right, the first time I applied for this job, I was reading the story of Nehemiah, right? And it's interesting because Nehemiah actually prays to God and says, God, please give me favor in the king's heart so that way he would grant my wish. And I remember praying that prayer. I was like, I'm going to try that for this interview. I'm going to pray that God will put some favor in that guy's heart who's going to hire me and let me just kill this interview. And I literally walked in. The guy was like, all right, man. So, here's a job. Like he was giving me a walkthrough instead of even giving me an interview. And I was like, whoa, right? And I got the job, and from there, like things. But it was just crazy because I was so nervous, like setting the expectation. Oh, what if he asked me this? What if he asked me that question about, tell me your strengths and your weaknesses? I hate that question. Like, what? What am I gonna tell him my weaknesses? But I feel like we do the same thing with God, and I feel like God is not complicated, right? Yes, He's complex. He's God, but He's not complicated. He wants a simple relationship with you. And I feel like if you were to give that an opportunity, I think you'd be surprised how awesome things would turn out. But
That
I
is so powerful. I love that. One of the things I admire about you is how simple you make the Bible because, like, guys, the Bible can be intimidating, right? You're looking at this huge Bible and it's just like, where do I get started? Do I start at Genesis? Do I start at the end? I'm not sure. And I think one of your gifts is definitely how simple you make the Bible. And like for me, one of my mantras that like I live by is I want people to know how cool God really is because He really is cool.
Facts.
Like,
I agree.
Look at me. God is my friend, y'all. Like, God
God
is
is dope. God
God
is
is
God is dope.
definitely cool, but oftentimes because of my public declaration on a consistent basis of like, I love God and this is what God did for me and blah, 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 blah. I think I've become the person that people come to for prayer. People who may not feel comfortable or confident enough to pray for themselves. And so I become that person for a lot of people. Like, will you pray for me? And then it makes me feel kind of like inadequate. Like, I mean, I don't pray like a pastor. I pray like a song. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, but then now I'm having these conversations of like, you do know I don't have a special power that you don't have, right? And so
Facts.
now I find myself challenging those calls, of like, why don't you pray and I'll be on the phone with you so that we could touch and agree together? Because I think one of my desires is that I really do hope and pray that people find their own relationship with God for themselves because I know how much that's changed my life. Then I look at your life and I see how much that's changed your life. And it's just like, I want that for other people. And so that's why I love having these conversations. Like I could have this conversation all day just because I think it's so necessary and so important. But we have like 5 minutes left. So if you guys have any questions, leave them in the chat because we're legit about to shut this down. You are a husband, you're a father, you're an entrepreneur, you are a spiritual coach, you're a whole treasurer. Like you have all these other things going on in your life. How do you balance it all?
It's a good question. How do I balance everything? So the first thing that I learned, and this is a lesson that I've learned throughout the years, I didn't know it, I didn't have it all figured out. In the beginning, when I got into this business, I ran businesses at my family's expense, which means that when I first started this, I wasn't spending time with my family in the beginning, and that's not how it should be. And that goes for like not only business but ministry as well. If you're involved in ministry as well, family. I've learned that family is my first ministry, my first priority, right? Over everything. And so I feel like that comes first. So I'm like, all right, how do I make sure I gotta make sure that my kids, my wife's love tank is full. And before I take on anything else, that's one thing I'm focused on. And I just try to plan my week out and say, all right, I'm gonna dedicate X amount of time, 10 minutes to read here. I'm gonna dedicate X amount of time to do this, dedicate X amount of time to do that. I think having a set schedule, I think when people don't have a schedule and don't have a plan, they just freestyle. And when you freestyle your day, you're often gonna spend more time doing certain things, right? You'll play too much time playing basketball when you should have allotted yourself a certain amount of time, 30 minutes or whatever, right? So don't get lost on everything you do, right? If you're gonna do start a business, don't get lost in the business where you forget about your family and now you're not spending time with your family. I think it's important. I think that should be the foundation is your family. So for me, family is my first ministry, right? Everything else comes after, right? My relationship with God and my family, those are important. Everything else after that is automatically going to come in place, right? Bible says seek first God, everything else will be added to you, like God will give it to you, right? And so for me, that's what I'm focused on is, all right, how do I make sure my wife's love tank is full and make sure I take out dinner, do something to make her feel special. Same thing with my kids. How do I make sure that my son is happy, that my daughter feels loved, that my son feels like he's getting tired? Like, how do I make sure that they all feel like they're getting the very best of me and not just my business and not just church or whatever? And I feel like if you can do that, if your family is happy, you could build on that. You could start a business on that. You could start ministry on that. Because when they're not, you're gonna come home to a broken house and everyone's upset. And next thing you know, you're not happy at work. You're not happy at church because at home is where you spend the most time, right? So that your family should be the thing that fuels you. So for me, I feel like anyone starting ministry or starting a business, I feel like you got to make sure that you set time for your family. And I've learned it the hard way. And now I know the truth. Like, all right, you know what? I got to make sure I allot them time. And so that's one thing that I felt like God has blessed me with, right? That ability. And again, something I learned, but I felt like now that I established that foundation on, hey, I'm gonna build on this and make sure that my family's first. Everything else just flows, right? My relationship with God, my family, right? Like it literally God, my family, boom, business, church, right? Or church business, however, like they're like on the um, I don't necessarily have them categorized, but for me, I think if you're gonna like start God, family, right?
Yes.
Not church, then family. Like, hey, not churches to me is it's under family. So it's God first, your family, then you have your church work stuff.
Well, listen, I use this amazing planner called the Plan, Pray,
There
Slay.
you go.
If you
Schedule it.
guys want to utilize this tool, this is how I keep my schedule together. I couldn't agree with you more in terms of like, for me, I didn't want to be an entrepreneur and then my family not know me, right? Like I always use this example when I'm speaking. I want to be the Beyonce of my home, not a Beyonce in the street, and my kids and my husband looking at me like, "Girl, who are you?" But one of the things that I will add to what Jose was saying is that you have to make sure, if you forget anything else in this podcast episode, make sure that you don't lose sight of who you are either. I meet so many people that lose themselves in the titles of being husband, wife, of being a parent, of a title, right? Of being a CEO, of being a COO, of being a pastor. When I feel like make sure that you're spending time to pour into who you are. And I think that you never arrive, right? Like there's an evolution of to Jose was and who he is today and who he's going to be. I'm consistently figuring out who I am. Like every year I'm like, okay, this is who you are this year, girl. Okay. It's a new strength that you might have. It's new emotions you might have. It's new trauma you might be facing, new grief, whatever it is. I think that you have to make sure that you're spending time with you so that you don't lose sight of you. I never want to lose my purpose. And I think like you could be married to the most amazing people. You could have the most amazing kids. Having an amazing life doesn't take away, doesn't deplete, doesn't delete your God given purpose. It doesn't at all. So make sure that you're doing the consistent work that you need to do to make sure that you're using all of the gifts and tools and anointing that God has given you. Because at the end of the day, there's only one you, there's only one Jose, there's only one Elaine. And I want to make sure that every single day I'm emptying the bucket, that like when my time comes, that God is like, sis, well done. You did that. Legit one of my goals. And I want the same thing for you. Jose, I think you have been so amazing. You have dropped so many gems up in this podcast episode. I really enjoy talking to you. I talk to you almost every day, but I really do enjoy talking to you. Please let the listeners know, how can we find you? How can we support you? This is your time to shine.
Yes, you can find me on Instagram. Um, so Aileen, can you tag me on this? Is that possible?
I got you.
Tag me on. You can tag me on there. I'm always one thing I'm trying to do more is post more devotional type of stuff. More for the unchurched. So that's one thing that I'm really passionate about right now is just I want to show people that having a relationship with God is not hard, it's not complicated, it's really simple. And so I'll be doing a lot of that on Instagram. So you can catch me on there. All right. But yeah, I mean if you want to support, you want to send some funds my way, not my birthday, but you can. RS payments, that's my cash app. But
No,
other
he's
than
not.
that,
First of all, I know this man is not asking for an offering
I listen.
on
You
my
said how they can support me, but if y'all need me, I'm here.
podcast. I'll make sure to add all the information on how to find Jose, how to support his business, how to find out more about what Reliance Services is. If you're listening to this podcast episode and you're like, oh my gosh, I might want a job with you, again, I will make sure that I post all his information attached to this podcast episode. If you want to share the wealth, the best thing you can do for this podcast, for this ministry, is share this episode with anybody and everybody who you think it would bless. I am so grateful for your continuous support. Jose, you have been amazing. Before I let you go, it is so difficult. Guys, I'm 36 years old. Calling my brother Jose at 36 has been one of the most difficult things in my lifetime, because for my entire life, I've called this man baby, but I know that baby is, he's a grown man, husband, entrepreneur, kids. But outside of podcasting and social media, I'm going to call him baby. But Jose, it has been such a pleasure. You're thebomb.com. And I appreciate you so much.
No problem. Anytime.
All right, y'all. I love y'all. Make sure to share this podcast episode with 10 people. Stay engaged. Leave us a review. That's like leaving us a low blessing. And we'll talk soon. Bye, guys.